In this episode of Rapid Gear Review, we're going to be showing you this Torch LED Bolt, otherwise just known as the Bolt LED light panel. What's up everybody, my name is Pi, Editor-in-Chief for SRLounge.com, and in this episode of Rapid Gear Review, we're going to be reviewing the Torch LED Bolt by Switronix in 3 minutes or less, starting now. Now upon receiving this lovely LED light, there were a few things that struck me right off the bat, and the first one was that the Bolt was very well constructed when compared with, say, a standard generic LED panel that I have here on the left. The Bolt featured a much stronger construction with tougher and more rigid plastics in the assembly, and the Bolt's controls on the backside, they feel very refined to the touch, and the actions feel absolutely wonderful when compared to the typical kind of loose and floppy button actions that you'd get on a generic LED panel. The next thing that was kind of impossible not to notice is the actual size in comparison to this standard generic LED light panel. The Bolt is about twice as thick, and that's without the battery installed. With this battery installed, it becomes even larger and more heavy, and this could be a con for some, but we knew exactly why it's this big. With this lovely battery and with these lovely internal electronics, the Bolt puts out around 200 watts of light output in this tiny form factor. So compared to generic LED panels, well, there really is no comparison. So just check out how much more light the Bolt puts out compared to this generic LED panel on the same settings. In this video, we have the Bolt and the generic LEDs set to the same light temperature, and you can see just how much more power the Bolt is putting out. In fact, the Bolt is the first camera mountable LED that I've seen that can be used as a daylight fill. The light does have to be quite close to the subject, say around 3 feet in distance, but still it's noticeably bright even in daylight. The next most impressive feature on the Bolt is its battery life. While the rechargeable TLF970 battery is quite large, it is able to power the Bolt for up to 2 hours of lighting delight. All right, so it's a feature that I know every event professional is going to be very appreciative of. Now, to control the power of the light, we have 2 power dials on the back of the unit that control 2 light groupings of LED lights. One grouping is at 3200 Kelvin, and this is basically your tungsten grouping, while the other is at 5600 Kelvin, which is your daylight grouping. So for maximum watt output, we have to turn up both groupings all the way to the top, which gives us basically an equivalent light temperature of around 4100 Kelvin. So just using the daylight grouping itself, you can reach roughly 57% of the Bolt's maximum light output, while the tungsten grouping is going to give you the remaining 43%, or somewhere around 80 watts or so forth. I'm really not that good at math. On a side note, and in real world use, I must say that the 2 light groups is an absolutely wonderful feature. So while out shooting, we've been able to use both light groupings to adjust the temperature by very minute amounts to match our primary light perfectly. Or if we want a slightly warmer rim light, we can warm it up, and the results have been absolutely incredible. To illustrate this, we took the Torch LED on our equestrian fashion concept shoot, and we used it for several different shots. We used it as a hair light or a rim light, and to do that, we adjusted the Bolt's color temperature just to give us a very nice, natural, and kind of fitting look to the light that we would naturally have in this scene. In this next shot, we used the Bolt to give us a more dramatic look to the image. Again, we matched the color balance to our ambient light, we used the Bolt as a main light this time, and we directed it into our subject's faces, and it gave us a kind of very dynamic look. It looked absolutely great. In addition to these primary features, the Bolt also comes slotted from the top so that you can drop in filters and diffusers. And it actually comes with a standard softening diffuser as well. It also comes with a 12 to 16.8 volt DC input, as well as a power tap cable so you can connect the Bolt directly to external power. All right, so we've covered all of the product's features, but what about any cons? There really is only 2 cons that I feel are worth mentioning, and that's really the first being the size. And I think most professionals are not gonna mind the Bolt's size, but for the on-the-go shooter, the Bolt can be a little bit kind of large and bulky, and particularly when mounted to the camera. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. I'm going to mount this little adapter, and placing it onto the camera, this is on a 5D mind you, it still has a very, very large feel, and it does add quite a bit of weight. So this could be a con for some. The second con is really a spin-off of the strengths that we mentioned earlier, and that is in the way that we control the light output. We mentioned that the Bolt has 2 light groupings, one for tungsten and one for daylight. So to increase the Bolt's power beyond a single bank or beyond a single light grouping, we have to add a second grouping, and this essentially mixes the light and it modifies the white balance. The tough part about this is that we know when using the daylight balance, or when using only one light grouping, the daylight light grouping, that we're at 5600 Kelvin. We also know that that when we're using only the tungsten grouping, we're at 3200 Kelvin, and when we combine both at full power, we're at 4100 Kelvin. But the problem is that when you're combining the two groupings at anything but full power, you don't necessarily know exactly where your light temperature is. So we essentially kind of have to visually see and kind of test out in camera to see what the correct intensity versus temperature is, and then adjust accordingly. Now this definitely isn't a big deal, and most experienced users are going to find this process quite simple, but those that are unfamiliar with custom white balances, it can be a bit challenging. Along these same lines, you need to remember that if you intend to use this LED in tungsten or only daylight situations, then the actual light output is roughly 86 watts with the tungsten grouping and 114 watts with the daylight grouping. Only combined at full power do you get the full 200 watt output at 4100 Kelvin. So in conclusion, with a list price of $379, and there are occasional special offers which bring the price down quite a bit more as well, we're giving the TorchLED Bolt 5 out of 5 stars. The Bolt is very well built, it's extremely powerful and portable, it has variable color output, great quality of lighting, temperature controls, and so forth, and for the price, you really can't go wrong. That's it for our review. Hope you all enjoyed. My name is Pi, and I'm gonna see you all in the next video.